Democratic primary debate, presented in conjunction with Univision Chicago and the League of Women Voters of Cook County and the League of Women Voters of Chicago. Here are ABC7's Judy Sue and Ravi Bechwal.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's Democratic primary debate in the race for Cook County State's Attorney. A one-hour discussion tonight with candidates for a critically important position, the office with the job of enforcing the law and keeping people safe around the Chicago area. Thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Sue.
And I'm Ravi Bechwal. Thanks indeed for joining us. And joining us tonight are the two Democratic candidates in the March 19th primary.
And they are Eileen O'Neill Burke, a retired Illinois appellate court judge and a former Cook County prosecutor and defense attorney, and Clayton Harris III, a public policy professor who has also been a Cook County prosecutor. The winner of the March Democratic primary will face two opponents in the general election, former Chicago Alderman Bob Fioretti on the Republican ticket and attorney Andrew Charles Kopinski on the Libertarian ticket. Both of them are running unopposed in their primaries.
Now, this debate is produced in partnership with the League of Women Voters of Cook County, the League of Women Voters of Chicago, and Univision Chicago. And to help us out and to ask these questions that are so important, ABC7 political reporter Craig Wall and Univision Chicago reporter Mariano Hieres. And also tonight, we welcome members of 22 additional community groups from right here in Cook County, some of whom are going to be asking questions directly of the candidates.
All right, so before we get to all of that, the ground rules for tonight, which both candidates have agreed to. The candidates will each have 1 minute to answer each question here tonight. The candidate answering first will get a chance for a 30-second rebuttal. Time permitting, we may also pose some lightning round questions tonight with only brief answers from the candidates. We will then close the debate with each candidate getting 1 minute for a closing statement. Question order tonight was determined by ballot order, so tonight Clayton Harris will be answering first. I see our candidates are ready, so let's get right to it tonight with the first question coming from Craig Wall. Craig.
And this question is to Mr. Harris. The Safety Act is now the law of the land. How do you see this impacting your job as the county's top prosecutor if elected? And how will this impact your decisions in what charges to bring against various defendants?
First of all, thank you all for being here and for having us here. So Craig, you know, as a former prosecutor, as a father, as a professor, you know, I want to look at this question as it affects the entire community. The Safety Act, and especially now with the no cash bail, has done what it's supposed to do. As a public policy professor, what we want to do is once we have a policy, we want to implement it and evaluate it. Now that this policy has been implemented, it actually has made us safer. What the no cash bail does now is it no longer criminalizes poverty. The way that it makes us safer is that now people who should not be out on bail are moved to a detention hearing. So we have ASAs now that are trained properly to make sure that when the correct charges are lodged against someone, that they are held and detained or moved to a detention hearing. That has made us safer, and the data shows that it's made us safer.
All right, thank you. Ms. O'Neill Burke, 1 minute, same question.
The Safety Act is a seminal, once-in-a-generation change to the way we approach pretrial detention. So it used to be judges that set bond. The more serious the offense, the higher the bond would be. Now the only criterion is, are you a danger to the public or are you not? And I think we can all agree that's where the criterion should be. People who aren't a danger to the public should not be detained pretrial. What the Safety Act also does, it changes the role of the state's attorney in the determination of pretrial detention. Now, before anyone can be detained, the state's attorney has to file a petition to detain. If that petition to detain is not filed, it doesn't matter if it's a serial killer or El Chapo, the defendant has to be released. That is a significant expansion of the state's attorney's role in pretrial detention. It has become exponentially more important that the state's attorney knows what they're doing and they put in place structure, training, and criteria for when we're seeking detention.
Okay, thank you. 30 seconds back to Mr. Harris.
Having gone through bond court and arraignments, we know how this works. We have the state's attorneys that are there to train the new state's attorneys that come in. So I'm confident that we can continue and implement this very important piece of policy, public policy.
All right, thank you. So we're going to move on to our next question here tonight. It is coming from Univision Chicago's Mariano Hialis, starting with Ms. O'Neill Burke right now.
Ms. O'Neill Burke, State Attorney Kim Foxx has decided to raise the threshold for felony prosecution of retail theft from the state law of $300 to $1,000. Critics believe this encouraged criminals to engage in a lot of smash and grabs and flash mob thefts. Will you continue with this policy? Why or why not?
The felony retail theft statute reads the felony amount is $300 or above. The current state's attorney has decided that they will not prosecute if it's less than $1,000. I took an oath as a judge, and I will take the same oath as state's attorney that I will uphold the law. So if there's an appetite to change the law, the correct way to do that is to go to Springfield and change the law. It is not appropriate for an office holder to say, sua sponte, I'm just not going to enforce the law. But that doesn't mean that everybody who's charged with retail theft should go to jail. There is a wide variety of options that are available to a prosecutor. If somebody doesn't have a background and this is their first offense, they can go to theft school and then they don't get arrested again, it's off the record. It doesn't impact their life. Then you can grade it up to supervision, probation, and jail time. It does not mean that we don't enforce the law. Not enforcing the law doesn't deter crime, it promotes crime. And we're seeing the ramifications of that all over the city.
All right, thank you. Mr. Harris.
We're going to enforce the law as well. But the question about keeping the threshold as an automatic felony at $1,000, we are going to keep it at $1,000. We're going to look at everything below $1,000 and we'll charge it as a misdemeanor. But it's almost just not a fair question as it stands, because if there's a smash and grab, and this is where it starts, if there's a breaking, then it doesn't matter whether it's $1,000, $300, or $4. If there's a breaking, then we can charge it as a burglary, and that's a felony. If there is an assault, it doesn't matter again. If it's $1,000 or $300, we can charge it as a robbery, in which case it's a felony. So to say we're just going to follow the law but then qualify it, I'm telling you exactly what we're going to do. We're going to charge as a blanket $1,000 as a felony and below as a misdemeanor, or however the other facts go. We're going to charge people appropriately for the crimes that they've committed or been accused of.
Would you like 30 seconds for a rebuttal?
Mr. Harris has just told you that he will not follow the law. That is not the law. Is to be upheld by the prosecutor. You have a range of options available to you. You can clear out several aisles in Walgreens before you get to a $1,000 threshold. The ramifications of this policy are Walgreens, CVS, Target, Walmart have closed all over the city and the county in the neighborhoods which they are needed the most in. So I do not agree with that.
All right, we're going to move on to our next question. Thank you very much. It is also coming from Mariano here tonight. This time, Mr. Harris will respond first.
Mr. Harris, it's sometimes minors who take part in this type of activity. Another one, carjackings. The last 2 years, more than 50% of the people arrested for this type of crime were minors. What is the minimum age you think is appropriate for bringing charges against juveniles?
First, before I answer that, I want to make it clear that I did not say I would not follow the law. Facts matter here. What I said was we are going to apply the law correctly. What I didn't do was pander to the community. What I told you is what I'm going to do. The question is, if we have a little girl who can't get a cell phone for her 11th birthday and she goes into a store with her mom, no background, and she takes a phone and she's caught, are you saying that you're going to charge her with a felony? You're not going to charge a 10-year-old girl who does that as a felony. So saying that you're going to follow the law and then saying that I say I'm not going to follow the law, it's not it. I'm telling you exactly what I'm going to do. Now, minors, we have to deal with minors and carjackings. It is extremely important that we get these armed robberies under control. Carjackings with a weapon under control. Your question on what age, whatever age is committed, we're holding everyone accountable, but we're holding them accountable appropriately. What I want to do is add a 10th division in special prosecutions that focuses directly on organized crime. Organized crime will focus on carjackings, the gun epidemic that we have. So the age is not relevant at that point in time.
Thank you, and that is our time for that question for you, Ms. O'Neill Burke.
The Juvenile Court Act governs everyone until the age of 18. All the armed robberies and the carjackings will be in juvenile court until somebody is 18 under the Juvenile Court Act. And Mr. Harris' example of the 11-year-old would be in juvenile court under the Juvenile Court Act. There's only 2 offenses you can be transferred to the adult system on: murder and aggravated sexual assault. So all of the armed robberies, all of the carjackings will be in juvenile court. It is very difficult to detain a juvenile. So the question becomes, what do you do with all of this influx of juvenile crime with armed robberies and carjackings? We need to bring the structure back up. The pandemic blew a hole in our society, and they had no structure for 2 years. I have 4 children, and I can tell you children do not do well with unstructured time. They do what children do. They get in trouble. So now it's time to give them structure. So what I want to do is I want to have somebody checking them in at school and checking them out at 3:30. The vast majority of juveniles get arrested between 3:30 and 10 o'clock at night. That's when we're going to keep them busy doing job training, learning enrichment, or an apprenticeship with the trades.
Okay, thank you. 30-second rebuttal.
Again, what we're going to do is we're going to hold everyone accountable appropriately for what's done. When you ask what age, it doesn't matter at the age of that time. What we're going to do is look at the cause and why the individual is there. So when you're looking at individuals, young individuals, you're looking at the bottom rung. I went through suppressive prosecutions. What this division will do now is it will hold everyone accountable, but will work up to cut off the heads, the people that are directing these children to do that. That is where we need to focus our resources, is where the problem lies, not the issues.
All right, let's get to Craig Wall right now, asking our next question here tonight with Ms. O'Neill Burke. Now responding first, Craig.
Both of you have talked about the importance of going after the root causes of crime. Does the state's attorney actually have a role in that? And if so, what is it?
The state's attorney has a huge role in that. And so I'm going to use gun crime as an example. The 60% of guns used in crimes in Illinois come from 5 gun shops in Illinois. There is a river of guns flooding the city right now. I think we've all seen the ramifications of that. We're seeing teenagers shot on the street in the middle of the day. We need to get control of the guns. So the way the state's attorney can do this is work with ATF, work with the U.S. attorney, and work with every single law enforcement agency to go after the straw purchasers and to find where these guns are coming from and cut off the source. 40% of the guns come from Indiana. We are somehow able to stop fireworks from coming across the border from Indiana, but we haven't stopped 40% of the guns. That's ridiculous. We need to do better.
All right, same question, root causes of crime, Mr. Harris.
We do have to address the root causes of crime. The state's attorney's power obviously starts at an arrest and goes to sentencing or post plea or whatnot. But I talk about the sphere of influence and what the state's attorney can be doing. The collaboration with law enforcement has to occur. I've already sat down with the sheriff, I've sat down with the attorney general, and we know that we have to stop things such as the influx of guns coming in. But there are more crimes than just guns. When we talk about the retail theft that's going on, we have to find out why it's happening and where it's happening. And what we do is we look at the data and we put the correct resources where they are. So your state's attorney has to be one that's able to collaborate and work with all individuals across law enforcement, policymakers, as well as our activists. So how we're going to do that is we're going to make sure that we have working groups that sit down with our retailers, with our restaurant, with our elected officials, with our faith leaders, and this is how our sphere of influence goes to the root cause of what's going on. The other thing that we're really going to do too is tap into one of our untapped resources, which is our teachers.
Okay.
They're the ones who see our children every day.
Okay, thank you. And 30 seconds back to Ms. O'Neill Burke.
There is programs called restorative justice programs. They are geared to specific offenders like drug offenders, mental health people, veterans. They're actually having success getting people back on track. They're a collaborative plan with the state's attorney, the public defender, and the judge to work together to figure out what we need to do to get somebody back on track. That's attacking the root cause. They're actually having success with these programs. The recidivism rates, the repeat offenders are significantly less than other felony courtrooms. That's the way we can get people back on track.
All right, thank you. And now we are going out to the audience tonight, and our many community groups waiting to ask their question. Ravi is standing by with more on that. Ravi.
Judy, they're so ready to be a part of this conversation. So important. Thanks so much. We will start with Gail Arrigo. She's from Chicago United, and she's with us right now. Gail, your question is going to be to Mr. Harris first. Go ahead.
Thank you. What specific policies do you plan to implement to address racial disparities in the criminal justice system? And how do you intend to ensure equal treatment under the law for all individuals, regardless of race or socioeconomic status?
Thank you for the question. I appreciate the question. As a professor at the University of Chicago, I actually teach policing race in America. So we talk about the intersection between policing and race. So the racial disparities, one of the things that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to recruit correctly in the state's attorney's office. Representation matters. I am someone who was actually recruited by Dick Devine, was the state's attorney. They came specifically to Howard and they spoke about having an issue with not enough African Americans in the state's attorney's office. We'll do that as well. We'll look at the Latino. Right now we're looking at maybe 20% Latino, 20% African American, and then the other 60% white in the office. So what we want to do is make sure the office reflects our communities. As far as equal justice, we want to make sure that even when defendants come, that we are making sure that we can speak to them in the correct language, that we are culturally sensitive to anyone coming to and through. We have to make sure that we're representing the victims and everybody in court, but that everybody has equal representation in the court and gets a fair shake.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Ms. O'Neill Burke now. Same question.
I believe that the office has to be diverse as well. We have to reflect the community that we serve. The way we're going to increase transparency is to make sure that our decisions are transparent and fair, that there is one set of rules for everyone. And we will do whatever we need to do to make sure the office maintains and increases its diversity. I want to make sure that we have plenty of victim witness people that speak Spanish, that speak other languages, that reflect where the victims are coming from. The victims have to be able to understand the court proceedings. The victims have to be able to understand what's happening at every given court date so that they feel that they're part of it. They feel that they're being heard and that they are getting justice. That's what I want to focus on.
30 seconds back to Mr. Harris.
I believe that what we have to do is we have to meet people where they are. And when we talk about racial disparities, we have to acknowledge what has gone on in the past in order for us to address it and to move forward. There has been a racial problem in the office in the Cook County, so we address it and we move on. But the way we do that is by being inclusive and making sure that our policies focus on equity as well as equality.
All right, thank you. And Ravi has more questions from the audience.
All right, Judy, thanks very much. We have Jane Ruby now from the League of Women Voters of Chicago. And your question, of course, come on, stand up. And your question is to Ms. O'Neill Burke first.
Great. What steps can you take to help reduce the time it takes to bring criminal cases to trial in Cook County?
What's happening right now is the office is woefully understaffed. So what that means is basic things aren't getting done because people don't have enough time in the day. Their dockets are twice what they should be and they're half-staffed. So a felony courtroom should have about 300 cases on the docket with 3 attorneys working on it. What you have right now is 1, sometimes 2 attorneys working on a docket of about 600 cases. What that means is basic things aren't getting done. Defendants are sitting in custody waiting to go to trial, waiting for discovery to be completed. What I want to do is I want to have a paralegal, 1 paralegal for every 2 courtrooms. The paralegal is going to go through all the video evidence. We get 6 hours of videotape on every single crime, of which you might need 35 seconds. A paralegal can help us get through that evidence, redact what we need, tender it to the defense, and make sure that we are getting discovery completed in a timely fashion so we're ready to go to trial. But first and foremost, we have to get the office restaffed.
All right, thank you. Mr. Harris, same question.
Thank you, Jane. To the question on criminal trials and what we're going to do, we cannot use staffing numbers as an excuse. We need to manage the office, and sometimes people are going to have to put in more time. I was in night narcotics. There was a time when I started a trial at midnight because that's what we needed to do to get through it. Now, that's not the most efficient use of our time and the way that we can do, so we are going to have to hire more attorneys in the office, but we are going to hire paralegals as well. This is the largest law office right? Second largest one basically in the nation. So we're going to treat it like that. So the resources that we need to bring to and through the office to take some of the caseload management off the ASAs, we will do. But we're going to do, under my leadership, we're going to do the work that needs to be done. We're going to roll up our sleeves and we're going to make sure that we are bringing cases to and through as fast as possible, but correctly.
Rebuttal, 30 seconds. Back to Ms. O'Neill Burke.
There are a myriad of things that we need to do in the office immediately. A lot of it is going to be triage. We have to get the office restaffed. So I can guarantee you that nobody ever went to the state's attorney's office to make money. What you went there for was the experience and the training that you received. If you wanted to be a trial attorney, there was no better place than to go to the state's attorney's office and learn how to be a trial attorney. That isn't happening right now because everyone is stretched too thin. Supervisors are not supervising because they're handling their own dockets.
Okay, thank you. We will actually continue on with this question, a version of it, heading back to our panel right now with our next question. It is coming from Craig Wall with Mr. Harris now responding first. Craig.
Yeah, Mr. Harris, you've somewhat touched on this, as has Ms. O'Neill Burke, but we're talking about the vacancies that are in there. You've addressed that somewhat, but one of the other issues that we've heard about in the state's attorney's office is a problem with morale. A lot of reasons could go into that, but how would you address a morale issue in there so that people feel like the job they are doing is making a difference and is helping keep the community safe?
We have to, thank you for that, Craig. We have to ensure everyone, the point is correct, that everybody in there, all the attorneys there could be working somewhere else and making more money. The people that are there, the attorneys that are there because they love the mission of the office. So we need to make sure that we're meeting them where they are. There are incentive bonuses that we can do. There are ways that we can try to raise the salary up so it's comparable with the public defenders, and we'll do that. But the other thing that we need to do, and this helps with not only recruitment but also with retention, is we need to meet the attorneys where they are. If an attorney wants to write and be a writer, then they should be in appeals. If they don't want to be in traffic, then we move them out. The way we're going to recruit, I was talking with the Sierra Club, and it makes sense. If there are environmental attorneys or attorneys that want to deal with toxic torts, then we invite them to come down and we put them in the civil division. There are areas within the state's attorney's office that we can target and put the people there where their passion lies. Everyone in that office loves the mission of that office, and we want to make sure we're meeting them where they are.
All right, thank you. Staffing and morale, Ms. O'Neill Burke.
The morale in that office is not going to get better until we solve the staffing issue. So what I want to do, I've already started recruiting other retired judges to form an education unit with me so that each and every level of the state's attorney's office, we have a set curriculum where we go over the Constitution, the case law, and the courtroom skills that are necessary to be effective at their jobs. We are going to have the gold standard for training prosecutors in this country. This is going to be like getting a master's degree in trial work. There will be no better place than right here. We also have to recognize the stories that these state's attorneys have to hear all day long from victims of trauma and victimization. That weighs on people. And there is a very real thing called secondary post-traumatic stress. We need to be able to recognize it, mitigate against it, and make sure that we are protecting ourselves and protecting each other to make sure that our mental health is taken care of.
All right, thank you. Mr. Harris, rebuttal?
When we talk about the morale, every attorney in that office, every staff and every investigator needs to know that they're appreciated and that the work they do matters to our communities, that the work they do is focusing on safety and justice. And we will make sure that they know that and that they're celebrated correctly, and we will make sure that the community also recognizes the hard work that they do.
All right, thank you. And Mariana will be asking our next question here again, and this is going to Ms. O'Neill Burke first.
Ms. O'Neill Burke, State Attorney Kim Foxx's office has worked to vacate hundreds of wrongful convictions. However, there are still cases pending like the ones linked to retired Detective Reynaldo Guevara. What are you going to do to process or review those cases as soon as possible?
First thing, I want to put all post-conviction cases together under one bureau. So appeals, post-conviction unit, wrongful convictions, all of them should be able to collaborate and use resources together. That will help free up some of the time and the personnel necessary. We can use each other's previous work and find out what cases need to be evaluated. So with regard to any officer who's been found guilty of perjury or misconduct, we need to go back and reevaluate those cases. That's not a question. The question is, how are we going to use our resources in order to do that effectively and in a timely fashion? By combining all the post-conviction units together, I think we can speed up the process a little bit.
All right, thank you. Mr. Harris?
This is the seminal moment here, and this is what we're talking about, especially when we talk about safety and justice. Wrongful convictions are not just, and they don't make us safer. We saw that with my opponent when she wrongfully convicted a 10-year-old child. What we have to do to ensure that we don't, this is the whole reason why we have a conviction review unit. We have to change the culture, not only in the office, but we have to hold police officers accountable. We're going to keep officers that cannot testify, we're going to keep them off the stand. If we cannot trust an officer, we cannot put them on the stand. I am the son of a United States Army officer. I respect authority and I was raised with discipline. So I say this without any hesitation. I know that good cops hate bad cops more than anybody. So what we're going to do for accountability to end these wrongful convictions is we're going to make sure and hold up an anonymous tip line for officers to report other officers. This way, they can weed out the bad ones. And we're going to make sure that the assistant state's attorneys also do not ignore the evidence, do not move forward with the case when they should be challenging the case, and that they are able to do the same.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. 30 seconds back to Ms. O'Neill Burke.
30 years ago, I prosecuted a juvenile who had confessed to the brutal murder of his elderly next-door neighbor. His attorney put him on the stand, and he repeated the confession. Years later, federal court found that his attorney was wrong and should have challenged that confession. No court has ever questioned my conduct in that case or in any case. The only allegation about my conduct in that case emerged 30 years later from Mr. Harris and his allies. Either he didn't understand the federal court opinion or he's chosen to distort the facts in that case for political gain.
Thank you.
I understand.
Thank you. No,
and what I understand
that was her time to rebut. Mr. Harris, Mr. Harris, we're going to have to move on now.
Logic.
That was Ms. O'Neill Burke's turn to rebuttal. Okay, heading back to our audience right now, patiently waiting to ask our next question. And here's Ravi once again.
All right, Judy, thanks very much. All right, getting interesting around here. I'm with Carla Rangel. She's a senior at Solario High School, and she's here tonight with the MICVA Challenge, a great Chicago institution. You've got a question for Mr. Harris.
Yes. Okay. My question is, what personal experiences do you have in relation to the justice system, and how will you leverage these experiences to maintain an equitable and just system?
My experience with the justice system is one of being a black man in America. I have been pulled over before for no reason on pretextual stops. And I know what it feels like. And what you have to understand, if you've never been pulled over before for no reason, is the humiliation that comes with that, knowing that you've been pulled over for no reason. So that is how it's been. I've been pulled over with a friend of mine who was white, who didn't even understand the inherent danger of the situation. So what we have to do is we have to educate people on the dangers that exist. My platform is one dealing with safety and justice, that we can be safe and just at the same time. Pretextual traffic stops do not make us safer, and they're not just. So that's one thing that we need to work with law enforcement to stop the pretextual stops and to make sure that there's not only equality but equity in the way that the laws are being adhered to and are administered.
Mr. Harris, thank you. And Ms. O'Neill Burke.
I have been on every single side of the justice system. I was a state's attorney, I was a criminal defense attorney, I was a trial court judge, and for the last 7 years I sat on the appellate court. I stepped down from the appellate court for the simple reason that our justice system is not working right now. You don't need me to tell you that. You can ask any victim, any witness, or even any defendant if they think it's working just fine right now, and they will tell you it is not. I was very proud to stand up and say I was there on behalf of the people of the state of Illinois. But I was also proud to stand up and assert somebody's constitutional rights in every single courthouse in Cook County. I have been privileged to work in a justice system and seen the good and the bad. What we're doing right now is not working. That's why I stepped down, because my experience and my knowledge is needed to right the ship right now.
All right, thank you. And now is your 30-second time for a rebuttal, Mr. Harris.
Both sides matter. It's good to be on the one side, and I've been a prosecutor, and I understand that. But it also matters on real-life lived experiences. So everyone else out here who's watching us who's not been a prosecutor or a judge or a defense attorney, you're still at odds with what could happen and what should happen in there. This is why we have to be laser focused on safety and justice. It's not an either or proposition. It's an and. I appreciate the question because it matters. And everyone out there has different experiences, and we have to meet people where they are and understand that these things do happen.
All right, thank you. We have another question coming from the audience. Ravi.
All right, let's go back as we move up through the audience. We're with the ACLU right here, and Kelly, you joined us with the American Civil Liberties Association, Union, I should say, and you have a question right now. I got the mic. Go ahead.
How would you plan to engage with the community at State's Attorney, including community-based organizations, criminal legal system reform advocates, and other neighborhood-based groups as part of determining priorities and setting policies for your office?
Let's go to Ms. O'Neill Burke first.
Thank you. Every single community is having their own issues right now. There's a lot of hate crime happening right now. We need to be able to address that. But one of the main issues that I find personally important is Dobbs came down 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago today. Since Dobbs came down, 49% increase in women coming into Illinois in order to get abortion services. That also means that there will be an increase in anti-choice advocates coming into Illinois to stop women from their freedom, from exercising their right to choose. I want to create a choice protection unit. The Choice Protection Unit will be staffed by attorneys from all over the office. These aren't cases that you can just drop on somebody's desk and be ready to go. They cover a wide variety from ordinance violations all the way through terrorism. Danville and Peoria both have had clinics bombed. We need to be ready for this. So I want a prosecutor's unit that will be ready to respond and prosecute those crimes.
Thank you. Same question, engaging with the community. Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Kelly. What I'm going to do is we're going to put together a community engagement team. These community engagement teams will be broken down with the youth engagement team that will deal with youth inside and outside of the justice system. We want to make sure that we're meeting them where they are. We're also going to look at hate crimes. We're going to look at communities and the issues that are going on with that. I think it's interesting, though, that my opponent brought up abortion and what might happen there. So the question, when you say that you're going to follow the law, I'm curious, if abortion is outlawed, does that mean now that you're going to prosecute women that are going to go for abortion? That's a question to ask. If you're saying that you're going to follow the law as written, I'm telling you all that I'm going to meet communities where they are. I'm making a commitment that if the law is to change, especially dealing with abortion, that I am not going to criminalize a woman who gets an abortion, who makes a health care decision for her. What I'm telling you is that community engagement matters, and we're going to meet the communities where they are to ensure that justice is served.
All right, 30-second rebuttal, Ms. O'Neill Burke.
States can always give their citizens more rights than the federal government gives them. And our state has enshrined abortion rights as a right in Illinois. So whatever happens in federal system, Illinois has protected the right to choose. And we're seeing that because Illinois is an island of reproductive freedom. We're seeing that all over. We will continue to be an island for reproductive freedom.
All right, thank you. And now I get a chance to pose a question to the both of you, and with Mr. Harris answering first with this question. So here is what I wanted to ask tonight. There has been a movement in recent years here and in other places across the country toward restorative justice. Please define what that means to you and how would you practically implement it? Again, starting with Mr. Harris.
Thank you for that question. Restorative justice is extremely important. What that means is that we are looking to make communities whole again. And how we do that is we deal with the offender and the offended first and foremost. So the restorative justice community courts that we have, huge fan of these, and they need to be expanded. And we are going to help get more resources to come back. But what you do now is what you truly do is you have the offender working with the offended to ensure that there is a reconciliation there, that they're able to restore. What we want to make sure is that people who can come back to the community and be contributing members of the community are able to do that. But one of the things we need to do when we look at restorative justice is look at where we're starting. These courts really start at 18 to 26, which is appropriate, but we have to start earlier with some of our younger people, long before 18 years. So we're going to looking at the juvenile justice system and ensuring that we get these services for younger offenders as well.
Okay, thank you. 1 minute to Ms. O'Neill Burke.
Those are the community restorative justice programs, and I think they're great too, but they're for low-level offenses. There are felony restorative justice programs for nonviolent offenders, and they're geared for prostitution, drug courts, mental health courts, veterans courts. They're a collaborative approach that get people diverted and back on track before they turn to violent crime. I'm a big believer in these programs because I've seen them work. I've seen their repeat offender rates are significantly less. They get people turned around. If we form a bureau where we focus on restorative justice, we can let them collaborate and cross-pollinate and figure out what's working, what's effective, what is getting people turned around. I think that is the way forward for nonviolent offenders, because then we can offload all of these nonviolent cases from the felony trial division so they have the resources, the personnel, and the time necessary to go after violent crime.
All right, 30 seconds back to Mr. Harris.
Thank you. These courts do exist, and we're going to expand them. And diversions are great. Diversions help when someone has already come into contact with the system. So we can look at drug court or going to school, trades or whatnot, and mental health as well. But we want to also address deflection so that if someone comes into contact, they only come into contact with the system once, or better yet, never at all. So we can expand them in different directions. And when I talked about the sphere of influence, this is another area where we can take hold.
All right, thank you. And now we have a question coming from our Ravi Bajwal. Ms. O'Neill Burke will be responding first to this question. Ravi.
All right, Judy, thank you very much. You know, as a reporter and as an anchor, as a father, and as a husband, arguably, I hear about this the most, and that is about gun violence. It is one of the most, if not the most important issue that people within and without from the city, when they think about the city, when they consider whether it is safe, whether they're going to go down there, whether they're going to spend their time or money, that is what is on the minds of so many people. So I want to ask both of you, what are you going to do differently compared to your predecessors in the state's attorney's office to deal with gun violence in Chicago? Let's go to Ms. O'Neill Burke first.
The city is awash in guns right now. Every single day we're hearing about a new shooting. It's not just a gun, but it's a gun with a bump stock that converts it to an automatic weapon with an extended magazine. These guns are really hard to control. So we've seen a shooting in Lawndale where 15 people were shot that were not the intended targets. They're using these guns. The students who were shot on Washington and Wabash last week, 20 shots were fired in 5 seconds. That means it's one of these guns. The officer who was shot last week in the Prada store on State and Walton, the offender was found to have a gun with a bump stock and an extended magazine. They are banned under the assault weapons ban. We have a tool to fight these weapons, and the tool is the assault weapons ban. It elevates the class of offense and it extends the term of sentence. We can change how prolific these guns are by enforcing the law. Every time someone's found with an assault weapon, we need to seek detention and a jail sentence. What's currently happening is they have a gun deferral program. That means prosecution is deferred.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Harris, 1 minute.
So we know that gun crimes in Cook County are the highest charged and the highest prosecuted in here, but that hasn't stopped the problem. We had a shooting just around the corner from here, and it's not 2 people that got shot, it was 2 more people that got shot. I live in a neighborhood where we hear gunshots. More and more people are living in neighborhoods now where they hear gunshots or they're coming downtown. We have got to get that under control. How we get that under control is we are going to aggressively prosecute individuals with guns that are committing crimes with guns. It doesn't matter whether they're an assault weapon or not. Anybody, any individual using a gun in a crime will be aggressively prosecuted. We have to get all the weapons out of the hands. What we know is the majority of these guns and gun crimes are being committed through rival gangs. So we have to work with law enforcement to ensure that these targeted individuals are brought in and that they are prosecuted, and we'll do that. The other thing that we're doing is we're already, like I told you earlier, we've worked with or spoken with the Attorney General's office. We have to stop the influx of guns. And this is why I've proposed the 10th Division of Special Prosecutions to deal with these type of crimes specifically. And this is where the state's attorneys will focus.
Thank you, Ms. O'Neill. Burke, rebuttal.
When I did criminal defense, sometimes the criminals knew the law better than I did. They would tell me like, oh, you'd never do that because that's a 5-year enhancement. And I'd be like, it is. They will know. They will know when we seek detention each and every time someone is found with an illegal assault weapon. They will change their behavior quickly. We can get the gun problem under control if we start enforcing the law by asking for detention and asking for jail time. We can change how Chicago is perceived.
All right, thank you. And for our next question here tonight, we go back to Univision Chicago's Mariano Hielis. Responding first now, Mr. Harris. Mariano.
Mr. Harris, if you win, your office will have certainly to deal with some high-profile cases. State Attorney Kim Foxx came under a great deal of criticism for how she handled the Justice Smollett case. What would be your decision-making process in cases that will garner a great deal of attention?
Mariano, it's going to be the way that we deal with any of the other cases. What we're going to look at is the balance between safety and justice. We're going to charge people appropriately and we're going to hold them accountable. One thing I can tell you too, in my office, no defendant will know the law better than we do. We will be trained, we will be knowledgeable in everything that's going on. So when we look at crimes, no matter what political influence may come, no matter what celebrity influence may come, it doesn't matter. We're treating everybody the same. We're going to hold people accountable appropriately.
All right, Ms. O'Neill. Burke.
This job requires good judgment. And I could stand up here all day and tell you what great judgment I have, and it wouldn't mean anything. But I've been evaluated by dozens of bar associations multiple times, and each and every time they've found that I am fair, that I follow the law, and I have good judgment. Nobody has to take a flyer on me. I have a record a mile wide and a mile deep. I made 3,000 decisions in the trial court. I made 1,800 decisions on the appellate court. I have good judgment. I will use good judgment in determining who should be charged, what they should be charged with, and if a plea or what sentence should be allotted to them. And we're going to make sure that each and every prosecutor has good judgment by our training, by having mentors, by having people that they can go to and ask for advice with.
All right, rebuttal.
Your judgment is in question right here, and you talk about that, but one of the things that we know is that your opinions have been overturned 175% times more
incorrect
than your colleagues. Your judgment is that question, and it needs to be addressed. And this is the one thing that we are talking about here is your judgment. To the question, we hold everyone accountable appropriately.
All right, thank you. And Craig Wall is coming back right now with our next question here tonight. The first one to respond in this case will be Ms. O'Neill. Burke. Craig.
Ms. O'Neill. Burke, Kim Foxx oftentimes had a very rocky relationship with police. What would you do to foster the kind of relationship with police to better promote public safety as well as police accountability?
We have to have a working relationship with the police. The police are our main, if not our sole witness on each and every case. They are responsible for getting us all of our witnesses, all of our statements, all of our evidence. We have to have a relationship where we can work together. So what that means is if we are prosecuting and investigating officers on one hand and asking their partners and colleagues to help us build cases on the other hand, it just doesn't work. So what I want to do is I want to put a hard and fast wall up between the state's attorney's office and a special prosecution unit that will investigate officers and prosecute officers. And that will be staffed by attorneys of the highest legal reputation in the city. And then I also want to create a program where we have brand new state's attorneys and brand new cadets out of the academy, and we do a class together and we cover what they're going to have to deal with every day. What's the parameters of a Terry stop? When do you have to Mirandize? How are juveniles treated differently? And then I think by learning the law and the Constitution together, we can knit back the relationship.
All right, thank you, Mr. Harris.
Accountability is extremely important. There has to be a bright line between the state's attorney's office and law enforcement, and we will maintain that bright line. We will keep officers that testimony that we know have been false, we will keep them off the stand. We will do that. I told you that we're going to hold up an anonymous tip line for officers to report other officers. But when it comes to holding officers accountable, my office will be able to do that. We will hold officers accountable, and we will move forward on prosecutions correctly when appropriate. Now, if we need to have a second chair from an independent outside counsel come in, such as the Attorney General's office, we will do that to make sure that the appearance of impropriety is not there. But my office will be able to hold police officers and will hold police officers accountable. I've said it before, we have to have a working relationship with the officers, and we will. We'll rework that relationship, but we have to hold them accountable for the work that they do and how they do it.
A 30-second rebuttal.
Every officer I'm talking to is telling me about every interaction they have, there's a gun. And then they risk their lives every day in order to make an arrest. And the next day, they see the exact same person out on the street again. That's demoralizing. That's directly attributable to their attrition rate in the police department right now. We have to do better. We have to make the citizenry safe in the city and the county. A basic function of government is to keep their citizens safe, and we are failing at that function.
Okay, thank you. And now we have time for a few more questions coming from our audience here tonight. And this question will be going to Mr. Harris first. Ravi.
All right, thank you very much, Judy. There are all kinds of questions from the audience. And look what I have here. I have Nicole Robinson from the YWCA. Have a stand up. And what's your question for Mr. Harris?
What policies would you pursue to protect survivors of sexual, physical, and gender-based violence?
Nicole, that's very, very important. When we see some of the most heinous crimes that are coming to and through. I was sitting with a survivor 2 days ago, and she talked about what was important, and it was the resources that were necessary. We need to make sure that anyone who is in the situation, not just in and after, but anyone who's in the situation immediately is able to get the help that they need. So it's important that the state's attorneys are available when a woman needs an order of protection. It's also important that they know that if state's attorney is not available for a criminal order of protection, that they can always go for a civil order of protection. That's 24/7, and that there's 800 lines. So what we have to do is we have to meet them where they are and make sure that the resources are there. What we need to do in the office is staff up more so that we can provide wraparound services for these individuals that are in this, so that when they come in, they're dealing with the state's attorney, the same state's attorney, and investigator, and they don't have to go back and retell their story over and over again. So we need to do that on staffing, and again, to make sure that we are meeting them where they are so that we have the right languages and the cultural awareness on what needs to happen.
Thank you. Ms. O'Neill Burke.
One of the things that re-traumatizes victims is coming to court again and again and again and never getting a resolution on their case. One of the main problems that we're having right now is we're not getting discovery in time. So what I want to do is I want to have a computer system where the victim can check what is happening in this case. It'll show the arraignment date. It'll show the next court date. It'll show the rape kit, when it was ordered, and how long it's taking to get it processed. And that way, there's no surprises when you come to court. The victim, the witness, the defendant, the judge, the public defender, the state's attorney should all be able to access and find exactly what's happening in that case. And then we can also take the data and go to the legislature and say, it's taking us 24 months to get a rape kit processed. That's traumatizing for the victim again and again and again. So we can do better. We can make sure that we're getting the discovery that's necessary so we can go to trial as soon as possible for everyone involved.
All right, 30 seconds back to Mr. Harris.
Thank you. Nicole, it's management. We have to manage it correctly. We have to make sure that every individual that comes to and through knows that their case is important. I have to remind everyone that Cook County State's Attorney is the victim's advocate, and that's what we'll do, especially for women that are caught up in these situations.
All right, thank you. Ravi has one more question from the audience.
All right, yes, Judy. Now, this question comes from up higher in the audience from Juan Aguirre, who's with the National Diversity and Inclusion Cannabis Alliance, or NDICA. What is your question?
Thank you. Due to a lot of misinformation, only a small fraction of residents entitled to have records of their cannabis arrests and charges expunged have managed to get this done 4 years after cannabis was legalized. What, if any, steps will you take as Cook County State's Attorney to ensure eligible residents receive this life-changing service?
And this is to Ms. O'Neill Burke.
Gracias.
One of the things that we can do is publicize a cannabis expungement day. They've had them scattered all over the county, but we need to publicize it more so people know to come to court. The resources are there. Fill out the paperwork and get it expunged. Because you're absolutely correct. Those records are impinging people's lives. It's impinging getting credit. It's impinging getting jobs. So we need to make sure that now that it's been decriminalized, that we take care of that people are not still having that on their record and impacting their possibility, their future.
All right, thank you, Mr. Harris.
We don't need a day to expunge. If you're allowed to expunge these cases, Juan, it should be automatic. I'm going to push for legislation that makes expungement, automatic expungement, automatic. So once it's entitled to come off, it comes off. You don't have to go downtown. You don't have to go anywhere else. You don't have to pay $1. If you've done what you're supposed to do and it's to be expunged, then it should be automatic. It's a management issue, and we'll work with the clerk's office to make sure that that gets done as well as our legislators.
All right, 30 seconds back to Ms.
I think that's a good idea. I like that one. I don't have to respond.
Okay, well, that's simple enough for us. All right, we appreciate that. I do think we have covered a lot of ground here tonight, but we're going to change things up just a little bit here and go to our lightning round tonight. So this is how this will work. Each candidate will have just 30 seconds to answer, and there will be no rebuttal in this round, just 30 seconds to each candidate. And we will start with Mr. Harris for this round. And the question is, when you are conflicted about a decision, how do you arrive at an answer, Mr. Harris? I'm
a man of faith. How I arrive at a decision is I pray. I'm blessed to have my pastor here in the audience with me. I grew up in the church, and my faith directs me in the decisions that I make.
All right. Arriving at a decision when there's a conflict, Ms. O'Neill Burke.
I am so blessed that I have been married for 33 years to my law school classmate, and anytime I have a decision to make, I run it by him, and he gives me the best advice there's ever been. So that's what I do.
All right. And continuing on with our lightning round, question number 2 here tonight. And that is, and it will be answered by Ms. O'Neill Burke first. So the question here is, what is the best advice that you have received about being a good prosecutor? And if you could share, from whom?
The best advice I ever got was from a woman named Miriam McMorrow, who became the first Illinois Supreme Court justice. When I was in 6th grade, she gave the 8th grade commencement address, and she was just a circuit court judge then. When I became a state's attorney, I went to argue my very first case in front of the appellate court, and Miriam McMorrow was on the panel. She then went on to become the very first woman on the Illinois Supreme Court and has always been a North Star for me. So.
All right, and the advice?
The advice was do your best. Do your best, and that's what I did.
Mr. Harris, best advice you have gotten for being a good prosecutor?
I came from Judge Mitchell Ware. When I was in traffic court, we had an issue with an officer that came up, and we couldn't get a straight story from him. And I'm standing at the bench, brand new assistant state's attorney, and there was a lot going on, people yelling and whatnot. And I ended up nollying the case, getting rid of the case. And the judge stopped the court, told me to come back into his chambers and asked me what was going on. He said, "Case is gone, tell me what happened." I told him that there was an issue with the officer. He told me I did the right thing, and that if anybody upstairs where my supervisors were gave me a hard time, to come back in to see him. My supervisors actually were Joe McGatz and Shauna Bolliker as well. And what they did was they told me, you did the right thing. They empowered a young ASA to do what was right and challenge what was happening. And it empowered me to be the best assistant state's attorney I could be.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We do have more questions here for our lightning round. So part of the mission statement for the Cook County State Attorney's Office, and you can see they're right there on the website, it says to, quote, uphold public safety through the fair and efficient administration of justice. How do you define fair? And we will start with Mr. Harris.
Fair. This is something that I teach over at the University of Chicago. Fair is unbiased. It is unbiased, and it looks at the facts of the case, and it applies the law correctly based on the facts of the case. We hold everyone accountable appropriately.
Ms. O'Neill Burke, again, your definition. How do you define fair?
Fair is you look at the facts of the case and you apply the law and you use your best judgment. Fair is not letting any bias influence your judgment. It's not letting how you feel about it. You need to look at the facts and the law and make the determination from them.
All right, we have one more question in our lightning round here. So beyond all of the issues that we have addressed tonight, and we have gone through quite a few of them, what helps you maintain hopefulness about our justice system? And we will start with Ms. O'Neill Burke.
I represented a young man in juvenile court when he was 14, and he was accused of having a gun. We went to trial, and he got not guilty. I never heard from him after that, and I went to the appellate court in 2016, and I got a call saying somebody's here to see you. And it came out, and there was a very large man waiting for me, and I said, "Can I help you?" And he said, "Yes. You represented me in juvenile court, and I wanted you to know that you changed my life. I'm on my way to law school." And that was something that, who gets that? Who gets that where somebody comes and tells you you changed their life? So.
Thank you. Mr. Burke, what helps you, Mr. Harris, what helps you maintain hopefulness with our justice system?
The fact that I'm standing here talking and having this debate, I think is extremely important that people see the differences between us and they make a decision. I'm very blessed to be able to stand here, to want to come back and to be able to come back to the office that I absolutely love. I have faith in the justice system. I've grown up, and in spite of how it has been applied, I know that we can focus on safety and justice at the same time. So I think that this is it, and the ability to even be standing here for this office.
I appreciate that. So that is our question and answer portion tonight. As we approach the end of our debate here tonight, we are going to wrap up with both candidates getting 1 minute now for a closing statement, and we will start with Clayton Harris.
Thank you all for being here, and I appreciate it. I'm running for Cook County State's Attorney for everybody who's scared to go downtown or scared to get on public transportation. But I'm also running for the individual that's been pulled over unjustly. I'm running for the business that feels like they might want to close up because of crime downtown, but I'm also running for the worker whose wages have been stolen. I'm running for the community that feels like they have to look over their shoulders because of hate. I'm running so that we can have a safer and more just society. This is not an either-or proposition. This is an and. We can be safe and just at the same time. And how we do that is by holding everyone accountable appropriately. I think that judgment matters. I think that our background matters in what we're doing. I am a former prosecutor, a manager, a leader, a professor, and most importantly, I'm a husband and a father who lives here, who loves this area, and who wants to do better.
All right, thank you. And now 1 minute for the closing statement from Eileen O'Neill Burke.
The question I've gotten asked most often is why? Why would you step down from the appellate court to do that? Or as my husband put it, you want to do what? So my answer is pretty simple, and I think it's an answer that many of you have. I love it here. I was born and raised here. I met my husband here. We raised our 4 children here. My family has been here for generations. My great-grandmother was a baby in Chicago during the Great Chicago Fire. I'm not giving up on Chicago. I want my children to come back here and raise their children here. But I want them to live in a city that's safe. I want them to live in a city where teenagers are not getting shot on their way home from school. I want them to live in a city where theft is not rampant. I want that for all of us, in every neighborhood, in every town. So if you think things are going just fine right now, I'm not your candidate. Mr. Harris is your candidate. But if you want a fair, professional, effective prosecutor's office, then I am your candidate. Thank you for coming tonight, and thank you for watching.
Thank you. Some very, very important topics here tonight. And that does bring us to the conclusion of tonight's debate. And we do want to thank both of the candidates for taking part here tonight. And also thank you to all of the community groups for joining us here tonight and for the questions that they contributed.
Yeah, they were very thoughtful indeed, and thanks for coming in. And a reminder that the primary is scheduled for March the 19th, and the polls will be open from 6 in the morning until 7 at night. And early voting begins at some Cook County locations next Thursday, February the 15th, with more locations opening up over the coming weeks. Also, you can apply now to vote by mail, and you can find lots more information by going to the website illinoisvoterguide.org. So again, once again, thank you so much for joining us.
And now it is up to you. Make sure you go out and vote. Thanks for joining us.